Let's talk about due process. What is it anyway? This is Christina Williams with Just Criminal Law.
And David Mann, legal storytelling specialist. Okay, yeah, what is it? We hear about it all the time now. Due process, people aren't getting it or they are getting it. What do we mean by due process?
Sure, due process comes from the United States Constitution, and it applies in both civil cases and criminal cases. And, as a point of reference, I practice criminal defense, and I represent people that are accused of a crime. So civil law is the other part of the law where you're not charged with a crime, but you're still subject to a court proceeding. And so due process applies in both types of situation, whether you're charged with a crime or whether you have a civil issue that needs to go before a judge.
Okay, so yeah, if I understand it right, because I work on both sides of this, criminal is the government against you for a crime, civil is a dispute between two parties. So you're also saying that the definition of due process is different depending on whether it's criminal or civil?
Yes, exactly. So a person who is charged with a crime in the United States is entitled to all the same protections as a citizen charged with a crime in the United States. So the due process for any person charged with a crime in the United States is the exact same for a citizen versus a non-citizen. However, when you're looking at due process when it comes to a civil matter, again, every person is entitled to due process, whether they're a citizen or not. However, the level of due process or the, protections in a civil case it's a lower standard than in a criminal case. Just like with any civil versus criminal proceeding, for example, to prove someone guilty in a criminal case, you must prove them guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Okay, and in a civil case, if a party is going to prevail, they just need to prevail by a little bit. So that same sort of idea applies to the due process that is afforded someone in a civil case. For instance, like an immigration case, that's a civil case, and that's kind of the hot topic in the news right now is undocumented people or immigrants receiving due process. And what does that mean anyway? So we can go into that a little bit more.
Yeah. So we've heard a lot about that. And what is being said a lot is that right now people are being deported without due process. But it sounds to me from what you're saying here that it's more complicated than that sort of simple headline makes it sound like it is. Can you explain that a little bit?
Sure. So people are not being deported without due process because there's just not a mechanism to do that. So if you are detained because you are undocumented or you have committed some sort of crime and you're not present in the United States legally, then you're entitled to a hearing. And you may be in jail, so to speak, while you wait for that hearing, or you may be entitled to a bond and get out prior to that hearing or that decision being made. But in the civil realm of a deportation scenario, you're entitled to notice of that hearing. That is, you're given a day and a time to be in court. You're given the opportunity to be heard. That is, put on evidence as to why you're here legally. And you are also entitled to get an attorney, and you don't get a court-appointed attorney, but you're entitled to have an attorney represent you during that process. And then you're entitled to have a judge decide the evidence. And so that is the due process. It's very simple. There's essentially 3 parts to it there. You get notice, you get a hearing, and you get a judge to decide that hearing. And that's the due process.
Okay, so if I understand it right, it sounds like if someone is here illegally, which is technically a crime, but they have committed no other crime, which is, I think, what usually is talked about a lot in the media these days, the matter of their deportation is a civil matter, not a criminal matter, a civil matter. And so they are given the hearing, and you're saying that this is happening all the time, and those hearings are being done properly. Is that right?
Right. So they absolutely get a hearing, and a lot of times people will waive that hearing and agree to voluntarily deport. And the motivation there to waive the hearing is you don't get adjudicated to be here illegally and a deportation order signed requiring you to leave. That's good, because if that happens, then that affects when you're eligible to come back legally to the United States. And so people are being advised, you can waive this hearing and you can avoid this deportation order, and then you can come in properly by applying for a visa to come into the United States and get a green card or be here as a student, whatever the case may be, but then you're documented and you're here legally, and you avoid that deportation order, which then makes it really hard and lengthy, a lengthy process to come back illegally.
So is this a type of matter that you could handle with somebody, that you could help them with if they were to come to you?
Well, we currently don't do deportation type of hearings. We don't do immigration law, but it is an area of the law that I'm considering because there's such a need for it, and there's such a level of uncertainty for those that are here that are undocumented. We're really just a little bit of clarity and understanding and a path to come to the United States legally can easily be facilitated so that we have people here, they feel safe, they feel secure, and they know they have a right to be here, and they're not always looking over their shoulder, kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop, so to speak. So it is definitely an area that I'm considering opening.
Great. Well, when you develop that side of your business, people will want to contact you for that, or in the meantime, for any criminal matter that they need a defense attorney for. So how do they get in touch with you?
Sure. We'll include a link in the description where they can call, text, or chat with a member of my team anytime, day or night. Here at Just Criminal Law, we know you only get one shot at justice, so make yours count.